I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw wine in his face or knock over the table like a scene from some cheap movie, no. I just sat there, still, silent. Right in the middle of our daughter's graduation dinner. The table was beautifully set. Champagne glasses gleamed under the golden lights. Laughter had just begun to soften into warmth, and Amelia, our only child, was still wearing her cap, cheeks pink with pride. Then Gregory stood, my husband of 28 years. He cleared his throat, raised his glass, and dropped a bomb. I've decided to start a new life without my wife. The room fell silent. No clinking glasses, no polite coughs, no nervous giggles, just stillness. 50 pairs of eyes turned to me, colleagues, family, friends, even the waiter froze, waiting for me to crumble, waiting for me to sob or rage or scream. How could you? But I didn't. Because this wasn't news to me. Gregory thought he was delivering the first blow. He thought I'd be blindsided, humiliated. But what he didn't know was I had already bled, already healed, and I was already gone. So I breathed in, calm. I reached into my purse, the same one he had given me for our 20th anniversary, thinking it made up for forgetting dinner that year. And I pulled out a cream-colored envelope, carefully sealed, edges crisp. It had been waiting for this moment. I didn't look at him, not yet. I placed the envelope beside his plate, right between the rosemary chicken and the empty seat where he thought Cassandra might join us later. Then I looked him dead in the eye, my voice steady, low. This is for you. Read it after the dinner. A few gasps, a muffled, "Oh my God." But I didn't care. Gregory's smirk faltered. For the first time in years I saw it. The flicker of fear behind his eyes. The way his fingers twitched, unsure whether to open it now or later. He had no idea what was inside. He had no idea how long I had known, how long I had waited, how far ahead I had planned. Because when a man decides to blow up a marriage publicly, he better be damn sure his wife isn't already holding the detonator. And I was. Oh, I was. And that envelope, that wasn't a goodbye. That was the beginning. No one at that dinner table knew what was inside that envelope. They just saw a folded piece of cream-colored paper, sealed with quiet dignity, elegant, understated. But more powerful than any scream I could have given, what they didn't know was that envelope held 28 years of silence, 28 years of swallowing my needs, of putting his career, his dreams, his whims above mine. They didn't know it held 3 months of late nights, me, sitting in the dark, lit only by the glow of a laptop screen, following money trails, downloading statements, zooming into text messages he thought I'd never see. They didn't know it held the names of restaurants I'd never been to, reservations under aliases, receipts for jewelry I never received, plane tickets, hotel bookings. 2 people planning a new life while pretending the one we had was still intact. And they definitely didn't know about the prenuptial agreement. Ah, yes, the prenup. The one he insisted on all those years ago, because back then I had more money. I had family wealth, a promising job in finance, and he had dreams. He told me it was just a formality, said it protects both of us, but deep down I knew. He never believed we'd last. So I signed it, like a good fiancé, like a woman in love. Back then it felt harmless. Now, it was my armor, my sword, my shield. He never bothered to revisit it, never realized that the clause about fidelity didn't expire, never imagined that I, not him, would be the one to invoke it. Never thought I'd read it again, let alone weaponize it. But I did. Every single line. Because when the lies started piling up, I didn't fall apart. I didn't scream, "How could you?" I asked questions. Quietly. Strategically. I looked through credit card bills and noticed restaurants I'd never heard of. I reviewed our investment accounts and saw withdrawals he never mentioned. At first, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe a client dinner, a surprise gift. But then the amounts grew larger, and the silence between us did too. I knew I had to find out more, without alerting him, so while he thought I was meal planning or folding laundry, I was meeting with lawyers, opening a private account in my name, making photocopies of every document I could find. I started tracking patterns. Monday nights at yoga? He wasn't at the gym. Saturday brunches with his cousin? That cousin lives out of state. And the most damning, a down payment on a condo by the coast, under both his name and hers. Cassandra. She wasn't just some fling, she was his future, a future he was building by siphoning from our present, from our daughter's college fund, from our joint savings, from the life I'd spent nearly 3 decades helping him build. He thought I'd never notice. But what he forgot is that I used to manage millions for corporations. I made numbers speak for a living. I noticed every decimal, every shift, every sudden loan to a friend. So I did what I do best. I prepared. That envelope, it contained divorce papers, signed, filed, ready, with attached exhibits, bank statements, screenshots, emails, messages between him and Cassandra, and, highlighted in yellow, the exact clause in our prenup that stated, in the event of proven infidelity, the offending party forfeits claim to all jointly held assets. He had built a new world behind my back, and I had built a legal case under his nose. The more I uncovered, the less I cried. Not because it didn't hurt. It did. But because the pain solidified into clarity, into focus. I stopped wondering why. I stopped wishing he'd come back to the man I married. That man was gone. Or maybe he never existed. What mattered was what came next. What mattered was the day of Amelia's graduation. Because while he picked that day to make a statement, I picked it to finish mine. I didn't ruin it with a scene. I didn't make it about us. I made it about her, our daughter, who deserved better than a mother who fell apart in public, who deserved to celebrate without being overshadowed by betrayal. So I smiled. I handed him the envelope. I kissed my daughter on the cheek and said, "I'm so proud of you. This day is still yours." And I walked out of that restaurant, not broken, not abandoned, but in control. He thought I'd stay quiet. He thought I'd wait until he chose to leave. He thought the story ended when he said goodbye. But the truth is, that envelope didn't hold an ending. It held the beginning. Mine. Gregory, my husband, thought he was in control. He truly believed he was the one calling the shots. He thought I'd cry, thought I'd fall apart, thought I'd beg him to stay. He thought I was too soft, too predictable, too safe, that I didn't know anything. He thought I didn't know about Cassandra, the 37-year-old who called me for career advice just 2 years ago. The same woman who once hugged me at a holiday party and said, "You and Gregory are such an inspiration." He thought I didn't know about the secret accounts, the new credit card statements that never came to our home address, the beachfront condo he visited for business, the jewelry receipts, the dinner reservations. He thought I was blind, but I wasn't. I saw everything, felt everything, tracked everything. I just chose not to react until I was ready. You see, I've spent most of my adult life being the strong one, but never in the way that gets headlines or applause. Not the loud kind of strong, the quiet kind, the kind of strength that folds laundry at 2 a.m., that pays the bills when your husband's business idea flops, that answers the door to the debt collectors while smiling to the neighbors. I was the backbone of our family, but I never made a scene, and Gregory mistook my silence for weakness. He thought I'd forgotten what I used to be, but I hadn't. Before I was his wife, before I was Amelia's mother, I was Bianca Caldwell. I had a career, a title, a corner office with my name on the glass. I used to advise executives on how to manage risk, preserve capital, avoid collapse. And then I fell in love, and I traded spreadsheets for school lunches, boardrooms for birthday parties. He promised it would be temporary, just until his next venture took off, just until we got through that rough patch. Just until... But the just untils became decades, and the career I paused never resumed. Because someone always had to be the stable one. Someone had to pay the mortgage when his business failed. Someone had to work late shifts when he needed time to explore. Someone had to hold things together when he fell apart. That someone was always me. The thing is, Gregory had charm. God, did he have charm. He could walk into a room and win everyone. He knew how to smile just right, how to make excuses sound like dreams, how to sell hope even when he was bankrupt on effort. I wanted to believe him. For years I did. Because it's easier to lie to yourself than to admit that the person you built your life around was never building one with you. But slowly, the mask started to slip. The excuses became thinner. The guilt trips sharper. The distance wider. And Cassandra? She wasn't the beginning. She was just the end. The final insult to every compromise I made, to every missed opportunity, to every time I stayed silent to keep the peace. Gregory thought I wouldn't fight, thought I didn't have it in me. Because I'd always been the calm one, the quiet one. But calm isn't the opposite of power. Sometimes it's the evidence of it. While he was busy scheming, I was building. He thought he was preparing his big exit, but I was preparing my defense, my strategy, my escape. You see, Gregory had a habit, a dangerous one. He underestimated women, especially the one who shared his bed. He didn't know that I'd memorized the prenup he made me sign 28 years ago. Didn't remember that I had more money than him back then, and that he was the one who insisted on a fidelity clause. Didn't realize I still had a copy in my safe deposit box. Didn't think I'd ever use it. He assumed I'd never leave because I stayed so long. But staying doesn't mean surrendering. Sometimes, it just means you're studying your opponent. He never imagined I'd be the one to leave him first. He never saw it coming. And you know what? That's on him. Because while he was taking Cassandra to wine tastings and planning beach getaways, I was gathering receipts. I was screenshotting text messages. I was working with a lawyer who specialized in asset protection. I was getting ready. Ready for the day he'd finally say those words. I'm leaving you. But I beat him to it. That envelope I handed him wasn't a breakdown. It was a declaration. It said, I know everything. And now, I'm the one in control. He thought I'd be broken. He thought I'd fall. He thought he could humiliate me, and I'd simply fade into the background. But I stood taller than I ever had. He forgot that the woman who raised his daughter, who held his hand during hospital nights, who sacrificed her ambitions so he'd find himself, wasn't weak. She was just quiet. Until she wasn't. And when she finally spoke, she didn't raise her voice. She raised the stakes. So no, Gregory, I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't plead, because the moment you assumed I was weak was the moment I realized you were already finished. You just didn't know it yet. That very morning, while he was still asleep, dreaming about his new life with her, I got dressed, tied my hair up, and drove to my lawyer's office. It was the kind of morning where the sky looked too soft for what was coming. Bird song, sunshine, the kind of peace that mocks your pain. But I wasn't nervous. Not anymore. I was done waiting. Done bleeding in silence, done playing the role of the grateful wife. I had filed for divorce at 9:12 a.m., not just a formality, not just a threat. It was war, waged with calm precision. And I came prepared. That folder, what he would later call the envelope, contained more than paper. It contained truth, cold, clean, undeniable. Inside were 6 things. 1, a formal divorce petition stamped and signed. No drama, just facts. Date of separation, cause infidelity. Requested division of assets as per the marital agreement. 2, account statements. 3 joint accounts, 2 that he assumed I never touched. But I had watched them like a hawk. Every withdrawal, every loan to a friend, every recurring transfer to an account under a different name, which, with a little digging, I traced to Cassandra's sister. 3, hotel receipts. A charming little bed and breakfast 3 towns over. Romantic getaways disguised as client retreats. The same room booked every time, room 204, always with a note. No calls to this number after check-in. Cowardly, sloppy. 4, screenshots of messages, dozens of them, from his phone, from his cloud backups. He didn't even bother deleting most of them. Cassandra sending selfies in lingerie, Gregory replying, soon, just a few more weeks, I'll be free. Another one read, she's still in the dark. She trusts me completely. That's her weakness. I read that one the most. Until it stopped hurting. Until it became fuel. 5, a list of assets, all cross-referenced with the prenup. Every account, every shared investment. The house, the vacation property in Savannah, he had already promised it to Cassandra. Silly man. It was in my name. He hadn't even checked the title. 6, the prenup. Signed 28 years ago, back when he had nothing, and I had everything to lose. He was the one who wanted it. Said, it's just a safeguard in case something happens. Back then I thought, wow, he's so responsible. Now I know. He was just laying the groundwork for his exit, even back then. But what he failed to remember was this. The clause about infidelity, it never expired. Section 12, paragraph 3. In the event of verifiable marital infidelity, the non-offending party shall retain sole claim over all jointly held property, financial accounts, and real estate acquired during the marriage. He thought that clause was symbolic. He never expected it to matter. But it mattered. It mattered a lot. Because in the eyes of the court, that clause turned everything into mine. The house, the accounts, the future he planned without me, now funded by nothing. Gregory never thought I'd remember the prenup, never imagined I'd still have a copy. He assumed I was too soft, too sentimental. too busy folding laundry and baking casseroles to keep a legal document tucked away in a fireproof safe. But what he forgot was that I was a senior financial manager for 2 decades. I used to manage $30 million portfolios, negotiate international mergers, sit across from Wall Street brokers and make them sweat. I knew how to trace money through 5 shell accounts in 3 countries. You think I wouldn't notice when $4,500 disappears every 2 weeks from our retirement fund? Please. The only reason I didn't confront him earlier was because I wasn't ready. I needed time to build the case, to ensure every loose end was tied, to give Amelia the graduation she deserved. I didn't want her to carry the weight of our broken marriage into her new life, so I smiled, played the devoted wife, clapped politely when he made speeches, laughed at jokes that made my skin crawl. But behind the scenes, I was building something, not revenge, a clean exit, one that would leave me standing and him exposed. When I handed him that envelope at the dinner table, I wasn't making a scene. I was ending one. His entire plan, to break the news at our daughter's graduation dinner, to look like the brave man choosing happiness, to walk away with sympathy, to have Cassandra waiting with champagne in their condo by the beach, it all fell apart the moment he opened that flap.
He looked at the first page. His eyes scanned the words.
Petition for dissolution of marriage. And I saw it. That split second of recognition, of panic, of realization. He looked up, lips parted, voice caught in his throat.
What is this?
I took a sip of water, smiled. It's your new beginning, Gregory. Just like you wanted.
He blinked, still not processing, still believing this was some bluff, a dramatic gesture. Then he turned the page and saw the highlighted clause in the prenup and the attachment tabs, each labeled clearly A, B, C, D, all the way to J. Receipts, emails, statements, proof, undeniable.
He realized I wasn't bluffing. I was done. That's when the smirk faded. The color drained from his face. And for the first time in 28 years, Gregory didn't have a plan. He had a mess. A mess I had already cleaned up by erasing him from every corner of my future. He tried to whisper later, tried to ask me to be reasonable, to talk this through, to not act out of anger. But this wasn't anger. This was precision. This was truth. And that envelope, it wasn't revenge. It was restoration. It was every silent year of loyalty, every overlooked betrayal, every compromise I made for the sake of peace, folded neatly into 20 pages of legal clarity. It was me saying, you thought I was too broken to fight, but I was just waiting for the right time. And that time was now. I had loved him. Not the kind of love you find in storybooks, but the kind that builds itself slowly through early morning coffee, through hospital visits, through the quiet choosing of each other, day after day. I had loved him when we had nothing, when our furniture came from garage sales and we shared one car, when he came home defeated after job interviews and I told him, it's okay, we'll figure it out. I had loved him through failure, through lost investments, through those long stretches when he wasn't sure who he was or what he wanted to be. I had even loved him after the miscarriages, especially then. I remember the first one. We were so young. He cried harder than I did, sitting on the floor of the hospital room, his hands cradling mine like I might shatter if he let go. And the second, That one nearly broke me. But he stayed. He brought me soup, read to me from the foot of the bed, put his hand on my belly like he was still talking to the baby who never came. I thought, this is what forever looks like. Not perfect, not easy, but solid, real. I believed in him, even when I shouldn't have. Even when the world gave me signs. Even when I started noticing the emotional absence, the shifting schedules, the coolness in his touch. I kept believing because we had history, because we had a child, because I thought loyalty meant staying. Even when you're the only one still fighting. So when I saw the messages, I wasn't prepared. I had only opened his phone to check the weather. It was lying there, unlocked. I tapped the screen to wake it up and a notification popped up. Dinner tonight, same place as last week. From someone named C. My heart stopped. I knew. I just knew. My fingers moved on their own. I opened the message thread. Hundreds of texts, kisses, pet names, jokes they shared, nicknames I'd never heard him use. I felt like I was looking into another universe, one where I didn't exist. Then I saw the message that broke me. She doesn't know anything. I'll break it off after graduation. In public, she won't cause a scene. That was the moment. That was when the world tilted. Because it wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't just infidelity. It was strategy. It was performance. It was cruelty in its most calculated form. He had planned his escape, choreographed it down to the setting. Our daughter's graduation. The most meaningful day of her life. Turned into a stage for his selfish rebranding. In public, she won't cause a scene. He knew me well enough to bet on my dignity, to use it against me, to humiliate me quietly, knowing I'd never shout or throw a drink or fall to my knees. He weaponized my grace. And somehow, that hurt more than the affair, more than the lies, because it meant he never respected me. Not really. Not the way I had respected him. Not the way I had protected him. All those years I defended his failures, smoothed over his messes, made excuses to our daughter when he forgot her school events, told friends he's under a lot of pressure right now. I had been covering for a man who was already erasing me. And the woman he chose? Younger, polished, free of stretch marks and exhaustion. She hadn't seen him at his worst. She didn't know the version of Gregory who curled up on the floor in anxiety. The one who used to talk in his sleep about being a failure. She only saw the version I helped build. The man I repaired and repackaged. The man I believed in until he stopped believing in me. I sat on the edge of our bed that night, his phone still open in my hands. The blue glow from the screen lit up the room, but I felt like I was in total darkness. There are kinds of betrayal that slice clean. You scream, you cry, you throw things, you slam doors, but this was slow. This was heavy. This was a betrayal you felt in your bones. I didn't confront him that night. I didn't throw the phone at him. I didn't scream, "How could you?" I just watched him sleep. So peacefully. So sure that I would never leave. So sure he was untouchable. And in that silence, I made my decision. Not just to end it, but to end it on my terms. I wasn't going to let a man who couldn't even break up with dignity decide the narrative of my life. So I took screenshots, downloaded every conversation, printed everything, filed it away. I started packing, not my things, but evidence, the truth. Because the woman he thought he married, the one who cried at sappy commercials and planned perfect Christmas dinners, was still in me. But she wasn't alone anymore. There was a new woman forming inside me. One who knew her value. One who remembered who she was before she was his. And that woman didn't need to. I didn't go home. Not to the house we once painted together. Not to the living room where we spent Christmas mornings. Not to the kitchen where I baked birthday cakes for a man who was already cheating. Instead, I went to Diana's, Gregory's sister, my sister-in-law. And, over time, quietly, my only real ally. She opened the door before I could knock. No questions. No small talk, just a hug that told me she already knew. Her arms wrapped around me tightly, like she'd been waiting for this moment too. "I saw them," she whispered. "Back in December, at the mall, holding hands." I confronted him, Bianca. He said it was nothing, swore he'd end it. Of course he did. That was Gregory's specialty, empty promises said with conviction. He could lie like he breathed, smooth, effortless, charming enough to make betrayal feel like a misunderstanding. Diana led me into the kitchen. She poured 2 glasses of wine. I placed the manila envelope on her dining table, opened it, laid out the contents like a war map. The bank statements, the condo documents, the prenup, Section 12 highlighted, and the text messages. All of them. She read in silence, then exhaled. That bastard. We sat in her sunroom. The air was still, warm from the afternoon heat. Plants lined the windows, books on every shelf, the kind of space built for reflection, not confrontation. But today, it would hold fire, because not 20 minutes later, we heard the door slam. Gregory, storming in like he still owned something. Behind him, Cassandra lingered in the hallway. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her shoulders hunched, her expression nervous, like she hadn't been told the whole story. Gregory didn't even wait. He didn't greet his sister, didn't acknowledge the space he was invading. He just walked straight to the sunroom and snapped, "You froze the accounts? Are you insane?" I didn't flinch. I simply folded the papers in front of me, neatly, deliberately. Yes, I did. 3 hours ago. He stared at me like I had grown horns. "You can't do that. You had no right." I leaned back in the chair, crossed my legs. I had every right. Legally, morally, financially. His face flushed red. "How the hell am I supposed to live? I have bills, Bianca." Before I could answer, another voice cut in. "It was Amelia, our daughter." She stepped out from the living room, her graduation dress still on, the hem wrinkled from hours of wear. Her eyes red, jaw clenched. She looked at her father like she didn't recognize him, like she was seeing a stranger wearing his face. "You destroyed our family. On my graduation day. And you say this doesn't involve me?" Gregory turned pale. His voice softened. He reached out a hand. "Honey, this is between your mother and me." "No," she cut him off. "You made it about me. You stood up in front of everyone and made a speech about leaving Mom on my day. You humiliated her. You humiliated me." He tried again. "You have to understand. Relationships change. people grow apart. Amelia took a step back. People also lie, and cheat, and steal. You let me work 2 jobs this semester because you said money was tight, and all the while you were buying jewelry for your girlfriend? She turned to Cassandra. Did you know? Did you know he used our money? Cassandra looked down. I thought it was his money. I didn't know everything. Diana stepped forward now, her arms crossed, eyes cold. You two need to leave. You're not welcome here. Not after what you've done. Gregory ignored her. He looked at me again, anger flaring. You want to play hardball, Bianca? Fine. But don't expect sympathy. You're not a victim. You're vindictive. I stood up, slowly, and walked over to where he stood, too close to my daughter. You have 3 days to get your things out of the house, I said. After that, I'm changing the locks. He laughed. A bitter, nervous laugh. You think you can just kick me out of our home? Yes, I said flatly. Because it's my home now. Read the prenup again. Cassandra looked at him sharply. Wait, what prenup? Gregory didn't answer. Didn't look at her. He just stared at me, eyes full of panic. Bianca, don't do this, please. We can still work something out. But his voice wasn't convincing anymore. Even he didn't believe it. And I was done listening. You love work something out already, with her, behind my back. You made your choice. Now you get to live with it. Amelia walked over to me and took my hand. Sometimes, I whispered, it takes a storm to see who's still standing. Diana poured more wine. No one toasted. No one celebrated. We just sat. 3 women, different generations, same fire. It took 2 weeks. 14 days of silence. 14 days since he stormed out of Diana's house with Cassandra dragging behind him. I hadn't heard from him. Not a call, not a message. He didn't even try. Because by then, he knew. The war he thought he started at Amelia's graduation, he'd already lost it before it began. And then the news came. A simple text from Diana. Thought you'd want to know. Cassandra moved out. I blinked at the screen, then smiled. Slow, quiet. Not because I was happy, but because it was so inevitable. So obvious. Of course she left. Cassandra, the 37-year-old woman who once called me an inspiration. Cassandra, who planned a future with a man who hadn't paid off his car loan. Cassandra, who thought she was winning, but didn't realize she was just a placeholder in someone else's crumbling empire. She hadn't signed up for struggle. She hadn't signed up for frozen accounts, for court dates, for Gregory's panic attacks and financial restrictions, for a condo lease that got flagged by the credit office, because the documents she relied on were incomplete and full of lies. Apparently, she found out everything. The beachfront house Gregory had promised her, he never put down a deposit. The savings account he boasted about, almost empty. The consulting business he claimed was thriving, running on fumes, because I was the one quietly keeping the books balanced for years. Without me, there was no Gregory, just a man who sold dreams he couldn't finance. Cassandra lasted exactly 11 days in that apartment. I heard she tried to stick it out, probably hoped he'd pull a rabbit out of a hat, pull a miracle. But by day 12, The power bill bounced. By day 13, the landlord asked questions. And by day 14, she was gone. She packed her things while Gregory was in court, left a note, or so I'm told. Something along the lines of, "I didn't sign up for this kind of future." No goodbye, no apology, just escape. I didn't gloat. I didn't screenshot the message and send it to him. I didn't call my friends and say, "I told you so." Because by then, I didn't need to win. I had already freed myself. But the universe? It has a strange way of delivering justice. Gregory's business collapsed shortly after. When the court froze our joint assets, he lost access to funds he needed to keep his operation running. Vendors stopped responding. Clients pulled out. His reputation, once polished, carefully maintained, crumbled in real time. And the friends? The ones who cheered his bold decision to leave me for a new life? They vanished, one by one. Because when the shine wore off, when the money dried up, and when the headlines weren't romantic but humiliating, people backed away. Turns out, loyalty isn't strong when it's built on lies. And when the court date arrived, he showed up alone. No Cassandra, no entourage, just Gregory, gray-faced, thinner, wearing a suit that didn't quite fit anymore. Maybe it was the stress, maybe it was the loss of control, or maybe, for the first time in decades, he was being forced to face reality without someone else cleaning up after him. He barely looked at me as I walked in with my attorney. I wore a soft blue dress, no makeup, no jewelry. I didn't want to look like I was trying to win. I just wanted to look like myself. The woman he underestimated. The judge reviewed everything, the prenup, the financial disclosures, the timeline. There wasn't much to argue, because I had come prepared. She looked over her glasses and said, "The prenuptial agreement is valid. There is sufficient evidence to uphold the infidelity clause." She continued, "Mrs. Caldwell retains the primary residence, all retirement accounts in her name, and 70% of joint investments." Gregory sat still, didn't object, didn't argue, just nodded, because he knew. This was the same prenup he made me sign 28 years ago, back when I had more than him, when he wanted protection, when he thought, just in case she leaves, I won't lose everything. The irony? That very document became the knife that cut him loose. I walked out of that courtroom with clarity, not just legal, but emotional, spiritual. I felt no rage, no smugness, only a deep, anchoring peace. Gregory, meanwhile, walked out with a duffel bag of paperwork, a depleted savings account, and a rental application for a one-bedroom unit near the industrial district. I didn't wish him ill, I simply stopped wishing him anything. 2 days later, a mutual acquaintance emailed me. Apparently, Gregory had tried to get his business back on track by offering consulting services. No one bit. His name was tainted. No one wanted to work with a man whose own wife publicly proved he couldn't manage money, let alone loyalty. I deleted the email, didn't respond. I had more important things to do, like review contracts for my own growing financial consultancy, like help women navigate divorce with clarity and control, like rebuild my life on my own terms. The last I heard, he moved in with a distant cousin. He had to sell his car. He closed his business license. And Cassandra? She's reportedly dating a real estate developer in Savannah. You know what's funny? If Gregory had been honest, if he had sat me down like a man and said, "I'm unhappy, I'm leaving," he might have kept half the house, half the accounts, half the grace. Instead, he tried to play God. I didn't know what to expect the day I picked up the keys to my office. It wasn't grand. No corner windows, no fancy plaque on the door, just a quiet space on the second floor of an old brick building downtown. The paint still smelled fresh. The furniture was mismatched at first. Second-hand chairs, a modest desk, one tall bookshelf I'd always wanted but never bought because we don't really need it right now. But the space was mine, entirely, unequivocally mine. I remember standing in the middle of that empty room with the keys in my hand, sunlight spilling through the blinds, thinking, so this is what beginning again feels like. I had opened a small financial consultancy, specifically for women going through divorce, not wealthy women with high-powered attorneys, but the women like me, the ones who had put their careers on hold, who had handled the grocery budget for 20 years but never touched a retirement plan, who woke up one morning and realized they didn't know how to log into the bank account. They weren't weak, they were just uninformed, and no one had told them it was okay to ask questions. So I created a place where they could. At first, it was one client, a woman in her mid-40s whose husband had been draining their joint funds for 6 months. She walked into my office shaking. She cried as she said, "I feel so stupid." I looked her in the eye and said, "You're not stupid. You were trusting, and you're here now. That's brave." She exhaled like someone had just handed her oxygen. Then came another client, then another. They came through word of mouth, through a friend of a friend, through the kind of whispered recommendation that starts with, "There's this woman, she's been through it, she'll understand." And I did. I understood what it meant to feel invisible in your own home, what it meant to go from being Mrs. to just someone he used to know, what it meant to start over when your hands were still shaking. The office grew. I hired a part-time assistant, then a junior advisor. I bought new chairs. I framed Amelia's graduation photo and hung it on the wall beside a quote that said, "There is no force more powerful than a woman determined to rise." That wall became my altar, not to revenge, but to reclamation, to rising. And Amelia? She called me every week, sometimes just to say hi, sometimes to vent about her job, her apartment, her life. And sometimes, when the world felt too loud, she'd call and say, "Mom, I just needed to hear your voice." She visited one Friday afternoon, walked in, took one look around the office and smiled. "You built this," she said. "All of it. By yourself." I nodded, but it wasn't pride that swelled in my chest. It was something quieter, something more sacred. I had finally become someone I liked. Not just someone others needed. Not just a title or a role or a name attached to someone else's identity. For years I had been Gregory's wife, Amelia's mom, the rock behind the scenes. Now, I was Bianca, independent, grounded, no longer apologizing for taking up space, no longer shrinking to make others comfortable. Clients still come in nervous, still ask, "Is it too late for me to fix this? Can I even afford to leave? What if he hides the money?" And I tell them, "It's not too late. You're not crazy. You are allowed to want peace without permission." I don't just help them divide assets. I help them rebuild identity. One spreadsheet at a time, one bank login at a time, one deep breath at a time. Because healing isn't loud. It's in the quiet mornings where you no longer dread checking your email. It's in sitting alone at a cafe and not feeling like you're missing something. It's in looking at your reflection and seeing not just someone who survived, but someone who is finally living. And I am living. Not out of spite, not to prove anyone wrong, but because I owe it to the woman I once abandoned, the younger version of me who sat through broken promises with a forced smile, the one who held Gregory's hand in the hospital, the one who packed his lunch while her own dreams expired on the counter. I'm living for her. and for every woman who thinks it's too late to start over. Because it isn't. It never is.